Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Welcome, everybody, to episode 126 of Two Goalies, One Mic. I am Duane Steinell, coming to you live from here in Canandaigua, New York, where I'm currently on a work trip, and always joined by my co-host, Connor Hurley. Hurls, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. 126. That's a pretty significant amount of episodes.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure it's 126. I didn't double check to make sure that I had the right episode, but if I do recall, I think last episode was 125. So I think we're on 126.
It's pretty solid. Yeah, happy to be here. Obviously, a little bit of a nightmare scenario for Sabres fans, as we will obviously dive into here with Vegas up 2-0 and Jack Eichel in the driver's seat for the Conn Smythe Trophy. Of course, what else was going to happen, obviously, in his first full season back with the team. Of course, that was going to happen given the Ryan O'Reilly narrative of the past, but it is what it is, and we can get right into it. But yeah, it's been really interesting to say the least.
Yeah, nightmare scenario is putting it lightly. I think I tweeted out a couple weeks ago, if I have to watch Jack Eichel win a Stanley Cup, I might stick a pencil in my eye. Again, only in Buffalo does stuff like this. The stories unfold like this. It's almost like a long-term WWE storyline. You know what I mean? Like the way this all unfolded. It sucks, but yeah, that's why series there's 7 games. Panthers are back at it at home where they've been very successful, and I hope that they can tie this series up and take it back to Vegas. With some momentum. We'll see. Bob. I think we saw the really first crack in the armor of Bobrovsky in game 2. I know you saw a lot of people questioning the officiating, but listen, you lost 7-2. Refs aren't the reason you lost that game. I'm sure that didn't help, but that's not the reason you lost that game. But obviously, all the things that were going right for Florida up until now, the play of Matthew Tkachuk, the absolute unbelievable elite goaltending from Bobrovsky, just how well they were playing in their own end, the physical side of their game. Like nothing's really seems to be. It doesn't seem like it's to be coming together. And do you think that's because of the long layoff, Earls? Do you think that's part of it?
I mean, you could argue that they lost a tiny bit of their momentum. Obviously, even before the playoffs started, they were playing as if they were in the playoffs for probably a good 3 to 4 weeks. That game against the Sabres, which Devin Levi started, I think with like 2 weeks left to go in the regular season. Obviously, that was a must-win for both teams, but that was a playoff game. They had all of their momentum. They had all of their players get healthy right around the same time towards the end of the regular season and the beginning of the playoffs. And as you keep going through these rounds, you get more banged up, you get more tired. And after you finally get over that last little hump before the Stanley Cup Final, which is winning the Eastern Conference, significant accomplishment, let alone for a team that was the President's Trophy winner last season with the best record in the regular season, and they didn't quite make it. They didn't even win the Eastern Conference last year. For them to do that as the last team to get in, beating the Bruins as the best team in the regular season, I think that was a little bit of an emotional, potentially of a letdown. Going into the Stanley Cup Final, obviously Vegas had a little bit of a tougher series. You could argue that. I mean, I think that is a narrative that happens both in the NHL and the NBA with waiting? Would you prefer to just get right into it and keep that momentum, or would you prefer to rest up and maybe heal some injuries that aren't like obviously very crucial, but also like, yeah, they're gonna hurt you. So that potentially could be a factor. But as you said, what got them to this point largely was the play of Matthew Tkachuk and the play of Sergei Bobrovsky.
Let's call him Bob.
Yeah, the play of Bob. We were arguing who would win the Conn Smythe if the Panthers were to win the Stanley Cup Final last episode, and we said it really depended on what happened in this series. And right now, neither guy has played up to the standard that they brought for themselves in the first 3 rounds.
No.
So that's kind of what
Tkachuk had a game. Tkachuk had a goal last game, and obviously the hit heard around the hockey world, where I'm surprised that Eichel returned to that game. That was nuts. I mean, it was clean too. Even Eichel admitted it after the game. That was a clean hit. Eichel was at the end of his shift. He was not dogging it, but he was gasping for air a little bit, trying to make one last play, and Tkachuk caught him. Clean hit, shoulder to the chest. I was surprised he returned to that game, but he did, and he ended up setting up an important goal for them. But to that point too, like one of the biggest things also that has helped outside of Matthew Tkachuk and Bobrovsky is the fact that, they've had somewhat of balanced scoring up and down their lineup, and they haven't gotten that. Like Sam Reinhart hasn't really looked effective out there. One of the guys it's honestly really surprised me in these playoffs is the up and down play of Barkov. Yeah. Your number one center, your guy that you've leaned heavily on for a long time. He's your captain. It's been very up and down, very streaky, and this is not the time where your captain can be playing streaky. You need him to start showing up, and more so now than ever in Game 3.
Yeah, and I think this really also shows how incredibly deep Vegas is. Like, they've been building this roster for such a long time. Obviously, this is their 6th season as a team, but in I think their 1st or 2nd season, they went to the Stanley Cup Final.
First season. Their inaugural season went to the finals.
Yeah, first season. So they've got 6 of those guys: Marchessault, William Karlsson, Brady McNabb, Shea Theodore. They have all those guys who have been there. They know the system. They know the way they play. And then over the course, I found this really interesting. The only guy on that team that is homegrown is Haig. The only guy they've drafted and developed to the point where he's still on the roster and playing for them in the Stanley Cup Final right now is, I forget his first name, but that's a wild stat. They've basically built their team to the point of making these trades, bringing guys over that obviously the allure of Las Vegas. Like, I don't think Jack Eichel would have gone just anywhere. I'm not sure if he had a no trade clause or not. But the fact that he went to Vegas with all of these superstars already there. Mark Stone left Ottawa and went to Vegas. Alex Pietrangelo won a cup with the St. Louis Blues, went to Vegas. These are guys that have established themselves as superstars in other places in the NHL, and they left and went to this expansion team, which doesn't even feel like an expansion team anymore. They already have as much of a reputation and as much of an influence in the NHL as almost any other team. And obviously Gary Bettman's very, very happy about that. But the way this team is built, up and down the lineup, four lines of guys that can score. What we talked about last time in terms of the Conn Smythe right now, like, who do you give it to? Obviously, Jack Eichel is one of their leading point getters, but at the same time, he hasn't scored a lot of goals. Jonathan Marchessault, who's been there since the beginning, is now, I think, on a 10 or 11 game point streak, and he's getting all of these very important goals at very important moments. And then out of nowhere, they get a goalie who started out as their 4th or 5th stringer to start the season, and he's the second coming of Patrick Watt. Like, somehow Adin Hill is unbelievable. He's played out of his goddamn mind to the point where he's not the same goalie that he was on the Coyotes or the Sharks early in his career. I mean, he's 6'6", and if you get the right positioning and you have the right defense in front of you when you're a 6'6" goalie, you're probably going to have a good day. But he's been amazing. And yeah, like I said, it just really shows how good this team is. And it kind of makes the blow of Eichel winning it a little bbit less because he is surrounded by such a good team.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look at that Mark Stone trade that they made with Ottawa originally to bring him in, and he ended up obviously being their captain. How good of a deal that was. I mean, it didn't take them a ton to get him. He was already training to be a superstar, with Ottawa, and then they make that deal. They find their future captain. Maybe they didn't know it yet. He was just named their captain last season?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was after Pietrangelo was traded. I believe Pietrangelo wasn't their captain. No, I'm not thinking Pietrangelo. Who was the captain before? Pacioretty, yes. Was Pacioretty the captain?
Maybe. I'm not sure, to be honest.
I can't remember who the captain was, their inaugural captain. I just can't. It wasn't Mark Stone. I know that. Yeah. Obviously, he was just named captain.
A guy they traded for somewhat recently is now
Pietrangelo was in Vegas, right?
He might have been. I can't confirm it, to be honest, but
I don't know where he is now. He might be in Vegas. I don't know. Regardless, yeah, hockey show here, guys. But what do the Panthers have to do to get themselves back into this series, to tie this series back up at home, where you would feel more comfortable, obviously, playing at home? Any team does, but I would say when it's sold out, Vegas is the toughest arena to play in right now in the NHL, because those fans are out of their minds, which is, I wouldn't say surprising, but compared to other hockey markets in the league, I would say it's the toughest arena to play in right now. Where you go there and you go to Vegas, you're probably going to get a good chunk of Vegas fans in Florida. Just are. Yeah. I wouldn't say even, the Panthers are a Stanley Cup, obviously the Stanley Cup Finals, but they would still have trouble selling out that arena.
Sure. It's a fan base that we've seen throughout the years. They're not consistent, and it's a pretty fair weather fan base. The old saying goes, the series doesn't start until you lose a game at home. Obviously, Game 3 is a must-win, and I would even argue that both games are must-win, given what you just said about the atmosphere in Vegas. It is one of the best home ice advantages in the league, and that really says something about the organization. The fact that in less than 7 years, the team has created this type of distinct advantage. Like you said, they need to play tough. They need secondary goal scoring. Sam Reinhart has got to wake up. Brandon Montour has been great. He's been creating chances, but not to the point that he was in the first 3 rounds. Sam Bennett, Anthony Duclair, like you said, Barkov, all of these guys who produce these very clutch moments against the Leafs and the Hurricanes and the Bruins, they've been nowhere to be found. That says something about Vegas again, their defensive structure and everything about that team up and down the lineup has neutralized all of these guys. Even Matthew Tkachuk, who we were talking about, a top 2 or 3 player in the league before this series, given the way he was playing. And that wasn't a crazy discussion. Obviously, I think it's probably still McDavid and Leon Draisaitl is 1 and 2, but they lost to Vegas too. And they're sitting at home right now because this team is so well structured. Before the season, or even the last couple seasons, who'd heard of Chandler Stevenson? This dude is unbelievable. That's what I'm saying. He's unbelievable, and he's playing so well given how incredibly, Bruce Cassidy done a great job. He was a really good coach for the Bruins, and they didn't meet their expectations. Vegas swoops him up, and now he's probably going to win a cup. I don't think it's over, by any means, but I really do believe this team.
This is not going to be a sweep.
No,
Florida's going to win a game.
I really sure
they're
hope
too
not,
good.
to be honest.
They're too talented.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Bobrovsky, I think it was good that he got pulled. I think that gives him a chance to reset and hopefully get his bearings back under him. Because like we said, his biggest problem in the past has been his consistency, right? Mm-hmm. We always knew that he had the talent, he had the ability. It was just putting it all together at the right time. And he finally did. He was dominant in the first 3 rounds. But now, obviously, a little bit of adversity. I think you need a massive game from him on Thursday night. You need something that is a 35-40 save performance because Vegas is going to get their chances. They're big, they're strong, they're well-structured.
I don't think they've been physical enough either. That was a big part of their game plan too. The first 3 rounds is just you weren't going to come in to a game against the Florida Panthers and out physically play them. You have a guy who's a unicorn like Matthew Tkachuk. You saw it firsthand on Eichel. He's gonna make you earn it along the boards. He's good. When he goes to the front of the net, man, he is going to hurt you to get to that puck. And a lot of that part of their game has just kind of disappeared. It's just dissipated. I even said that going into this round. I was like, if you can play the same brand of hockey you have the first 3 rounds and be as physical as you've been in the first 3 rounds, getting pucks to the net, winning the battles in front of the net physically, getting to those loose pucks, you're gonna win this. You're gonna win the Stanley Cup, and they just have not done that. And it drives me nuts watching some of these games, both these games. It's just like, where is that brand of hockey? Where is it gone?
Yeah, it's tough. And like you said, like that could be fatigue. They've essentially been playing playoff games for the past 2.5 months. So unfortunately, like, of course you go on this run and you finally put it all together, and then you go up against a team that's perfectly set up and perfectly built to play against you. Like Vegas, like, of course they didn't have as tough of a run to get here, but they also kind of like, it felt like they rested a lot of their starters going into the playoffs. Like Mark Stone got healthy at the right time. Jack Eichel like really ramped up towards the end of the season. Like he even midway point in the season, I was reading quotes from Bruce Cassidy that he needed more out of Eichel. And now, as Sabres fans, as we know better than anybody, we're seeing the type of game that he can play. As amazing of a goal scorer he was for the Sabres, especially in the year before the shortened season, he, at his core, is a distributor. He's a playmaker. He is one of the best skaters in the league. He finds the open man, and that's what he's doing right now with Marchessault and other guys. We all knew he was good. Like, that was never the problem. Of course, the issue was the back surgery and the way he handled it coming back. But everybody knows how good he is. I think the 1A, the 1A, 1B thing with McDavid and Eichel was completely overblown leading into that draft. Like, McDavid was way better than everybody thought, and maybe Eichel was a little bit worse than what he was projected as.
Yeah, I wouldn't even use the word worse. It was
he's just not in his stratosphere.
Yeah, I mean, if he's, even in the Austin Matthews draft, that one could have went either way. Eichel's number 1 overall in any other draft.
Yeah, I think Matthews probably still would have gone over Eichel.
Potentially. The first year Eichel had in college, it was the best year a college player has had since Paul Kariya. And now you're kind of seeing that in Fantilli, not as much as what Eichel did at BU.
For sure.
But regardless, and obviously you had Tim Murray's reaction to losing the lottery. That didn't help. The constant, being reminded that, it's you and McDavid, Eichel versus McDavid, even after the draft was done and over with and that their rookie seasons commenced, that had to be annoying. And another thing that bugged me too is just we tanked for one of these two guys. Obviously you're tank for McDavid, but obviously Eichel, pretty great player to get to at the time. And I always agreed with Eichel's feeling, I always agree. It's your body, your choice. It's his neck. He has a life after hockey. He should be able to make that choice for himself. And I think it's disgusting that isn't given to players. That right isn't given to players in the bargaining agreement, collective bargaining, the CBA. But with that all being said, we all know how great of a player he was. I never put the blame on Jack Eichel in terms of his talent, his abilities. Obviously, I don't think I think we all seen it after the trade was over with. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't ready to be a leader here in Buffalo. But in terms of where you're going to point the finger as far as blame, I don't think you're pointing the finger at Jack Eichel the first, second, third, or fourth, or fifth reason.
No, honestly, I was completely fine with the entire situation until he came back and had that interview after the first game.
Dude.
I think that is when he turned the tide in terms of the public opinion of Sabres fans towards him.
Yep.
It was a cheap shot.
My problems with Jack, and it even wasn't even that much at the time because I was on ESPN the night of his return to Buffalo. Greg Wyshynski and Art O'Kale had me on their show, The Drop. I got to follow up, actually. I got to follow up Rick Jenneret. How about that? I don't know how you follow up that guy, but they asked my opinion. How do you feel Sabres fans should receive Jack Eichel? And I said, I hope they do respect him because he was involved with the community. And, I tried to put some sugarcoat on it, but at the end of the day, dude, we booed Danny Briere.
Yeah.
Like we booed Chris Jury. We booed Ryan Campbell. He's going to get booed.
We're no different than Philadelphia fans.
Yeah,
we're no different than any other sports town that cares about their fan base. And whether you like it or not,
you're going to get booed.
You had to know that there was going to be some type of stress.
Yes.
You had to, as a player, how could you possibly think that you would be cheered and lauded to the point that you were the savior, that God's greatest gift to earth for Buffalo? You didn't really do anything.
No. But here's where my problem with him began. I was even willing to say those things about him even after this. It was the interview with Elliot Friedman. That didn't have to happen. He did not have to do that interview. I get it. You want to put it out there. You want your side of the story out there. You know what, dude? You can do that with a tweet if you want to. You could do that in other ways. To go on national TV with Elliot Friedman. It was literally right after the trade. And admits is like, oh yeah, I did request a trade. Mind you, that trade request was barely a year after you signed the biggest deal in franchise history. This team committed $10 million a year to you over 8 years, and you requested a trade because you didn't want to be a part of another rebuild. Dude, that's a terrible look. And then we go out and we sign Taylor Hall for 1 year at $8 million, when the reality of it is that money could have been broken up and spent in many other places where you needed help desperately to be a competitive hockey team. And that ends up blowing up in your face because you gave them a no movement clause and you only got a second round pick and Anders Bjork out of that.
Yeah.
That was a joke. And that was because of you, Jack Eichel. That's the reason why. We got him because of you and your trade request. So he cops to all that. And he essentially kind of not directly, but almost sewers Buffalo and the organization in a way. And then obviously the post-game comments come. And I'm like, I was on his side for a long time, long time. And then he made those fucking comments. And that again, I am so surprised that with him making the finals and how well he's played, that I don't wake up and my mentions, just search my Twitter handle and Jack Eichel's name. You'll see it. I've been sewering him for 365 days.
I would say, I'm right there too. I'm of the opinion now, and I was with Ryan O'Reilly, that you can move on from things.
Yeah.
I don't spend every day thinking about Jack Eichel. Of course, I'm a passionate Sabres fan, and I think a lot of us are. I think it's to the point where it eventually worked out really well for both sides. As we've discussed, it was a really, really good trade given the situation. We got
100%.
I would say of equal or maybe even better down the line, quality player back in Alex Tuch, who wants to be here, born and raised a Sabres fan, probably a future captain or assistant captain. We got Peyton Krebs. We got draft picks. We got guys who want to be here. And from the beginning, especially as you mentioned with Tim Murray and the way the draft happened, it never fully felt like he wanted to be here. We've mentioned the interview he did with Josh Allen. Of course, he was good in community, and I think he kind of had to be honest. That seems like an obligation if you're the star player of one of the two major professional sports teams in the city. I'm not saying anything about him personally, aside from the fact that his reaction to the entire situation was extremely immature. And of course, you can be upset about being booed, but you don't need to trash the city, trash the fan base on your way out. There was no point to that. And now that you've done that, you know that, he probably doesn't care at this point, but he's a heel for the rest of eternity in the city of Buffalo.
Oh yeah. He'll never get cheered again in this city. I think the only way he could even mend that bridge is probably maybe after his career is over with.
Yeah. Or even saying something before he plays here next year or something else.
You know what I mean?
He's going to be a Stanley Cup champion. He's going to get what he wants. He finally got on a good team that supports him. If he were to say something like those comments were immature, I didn't mean it. I love the fans.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. Had he not made those comments and had that interview with Elliot Friedman never happened, he just left it alone and moved on, I think he has a big contingent of fans here in Buffalo rooting for him to win a cup.
For sure. He was the best thing that happened to the organization in 7 or 8 years. He gave us highlights. He made us nationally relevant again. We were never really close to the playoffs, but also we were never really good enough to be. We never surrounded him with enough talent to make that happen. Obviously, a lot of unfortunate circumstances with COVID and his injury and everything else. But yeah, as we've discussed, of course, this is a Hollywood script that is going to only add to the lore that Buffalo sports are cursed, and they will continue to be cursed unless we finally win one. It is what it is.
If this was a movie script, who would play Jack Eichel?
God, I'm trying. I always compare him to the guy from Home Alone, one of the
he's part of bandits. That meme.
The guy with the curly hair. I don't even know his actor name, but I think he's too old for him at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know, like who plays like a really good villain in movies, like Cillian Murphy. Like
there's a good one.
Like that type of thing. Like a guy that like is very good.
Always a bad guy.
Yeah, who's very like he's obviously in the movie with the TV show on Netflix with the guys with the hats and the fucking I can't think of it right now. But either way, a guy like that who is a notorious villain. Like that's what I think about him.
He's got like the mustache and he's always twirling like this. You know what I mean? Like
I can't really think about Macaulay Culkin kind of looks like him, to be honest. But I don't know. He's a very unique looking person. Yeah, and that's not even taking a shot at him. But yeah, it is what it is. I think we can now kind of look at it objectively as he's a very good player. He's going to be a very good player in the league for the next 10 years. Given the way that this team is structured, they might be built to win 2 or 3 more cups, which is saying something. And it's also, I thought about this last night, especially given that it's the Panthers in the Stanley Cup final, and they got in by 1 point. And the team that they got in over was us. Theoretically, had the Sabres got in, Devin Levi catches lightning in a bottle. They beat the Bruins in the first round, beat the Leafs in the second round, beat the Panthers in the third round. Imagine that storyline. And get to the Stanley Cup final, and we're playing Jack Eichel. Can you possibly imagine the storyline and everything around the emotion surrounding that? And it also made me think that given how good Vegas is and how they're set up for the future and everything else, that is a legit and distinct possibility for the future. Especially if the Sabres do as we wish this summer. For instance, Connor Hellebuck, or if the Flyers are completely tanking and selling everybody off this summer, Travis Konecny or Kevin Hayes or types of guys like that we can bring in and become a legitimate Eastern Conference playoff contender. We can very well meet Jack Eichel in the Stanley Cup final next year or the year after. So I personally hope it happens because that's the type of Hollywood script that I think that we deserve. Finally, I always thought about like it could have happened a couple of years ago. The Bills meeting Tom Brady in the Super Bowl on the Buccaneers. If the Sabres meet Jack Eichel on the Knights in the finals in the next 2 years or however it happens, that would be the perfect ending. So
I agree.
We can cross our fingers.
And I think I think too, and I pose this question, after the, when things really started to finally trend in the right direction, especially when Levi came around, and I genuinely thought it was a right question. And if the Bills, I don't mean to play, a guy who tries to create angst or anxiety in between the fan bases, but I think that it's a legitimate question to ask that. I mean, the Sabres could, they're plus 4,500 right now. They're plus 4,500 to win the Stanley Cup next season. I'm not saying that's going to happen. No, it's not. But I'd put $100 on it. I would.
Like which team wins first?
Huh?
Like which team wins first, the Sabres or the Bills?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the Stanley Cup is much harder to win.
It is. Yeah, 100%.
Obviously, you need to win 3 series, 4 games each to even get there, let alone 4 more once you actually get there. And we're seeing how hard that is, especially for a team like the Panthers. You
also see what the Bills have to go through to even get there.
Exactly. Like the NFL is really hard too.
Mahomes.
We're gonna have to beat probably the greatest quarterback in my opinion in NFL history, who right now is Patrick Mahomes, or who's trending to be that at the end of his career. He's more talented than Tom Brady. He's already on a better trajectory than Tom Brady, and he has a team surrounding him that's built to win for the next 10 to 15 years. So, yeah, it's not set up well, but at the same time, like I don't know. I would still bet on the Bills, given that they do have Josh Allen, and I would even say this year we don't have to talk about the Bills.
Well, I know we don't. But my point is, it's fun to have that conversation because you can finally have it.
Especially like, for instance, like I said, if the Sabres were to go out and get Connor Hellebuck, I think it would go down from maybe plus 4,500 to maybe plus 2,500, maybe even less. And then if you trade for a top 4 defenseman, you fill out that bottom 6, adding to what this team already had, adding Devin Levi to the mix, adding Yuri Kulik, adding potentially Matthew Savoy or a lot of these younger guys. That's a team that can win. That's a team that can sneak in either as a wild card or the 2nd or 3rd seed in the Atlantic, and then potentially make a run because they are so young and they have more legs than these older teams in the Eastern Conference. So it is not without the realm of the possibility, and we were very, very close this season.
We were. Another thing too, it's just there's just a couple pieces away, man, and it's exciting that we were able to sign Ryan Johnson. Devin Lee's, it's so exciting to see him, what he's going to blossom into. It's just fun to finally have conversations where it's not every off season. What are we blowing up? It's what are we adding to get us over the hump?
For sure.
I think right now, you look at this Sabres team, and even on paper right now, I think they're a playoff team. I just do. But what puts them over the hump to make them a bona fide playoff team? And that's the fun conversations I'm enjoying having finally after a decade.
And like even going into the draft, like it was always like, oh, top 10 draft pick. Like, who are we going to take number 1? But when is he going to play? Next 2 to 3 seasons. Thankfully, it happened a little bit quicker than expected for guys like Dylan Cousins and Jack Quinn. But now with the 13th overall pick, you're asking the question: should we trade that pick for a bona fide NHL forward or defenseman or even goalie? You're having that discussion because I think the Sabres are that close.
Yes, and that's the exciting part. Transitioning out of that, we're talking about, signings, tradings. There was a big 3-team trade today. Between the Philadelphia Flyers, LA Kings, and Columbus Blue Jackets. Just to give everybody a quick breakdown, who aren't aware, Blue Jackets receive Ivan Provorov, and the LA Kings receive Kevin Kunutin, defenseman, Hayden Hodgson, forward, and they will retain 30% in Ivan Provorov's contract. And then the Flyers are the winners, clear as day, of this trade. They get Cal Peterson. Obviously, I'm not leading off like he's the star piece of this, but defenseman Sean Walker, defenseman Hals, but they get a Kings 2nd-round pick, a Columbus Blue Jackets 1st-round pick, and then a conditional 2nd-round pick in 2024. Not too much sure of the conditions of that 2nd-round pick, but I'd imagine it would involve that maybe potentially turning into a 1st. But I mean, that's a great haul if you're a Flyers fan. I mean,
and also like a first-time GM in Danny Briere.
That's a great move.
Exactly. Like you're finally acknowledging as an organization, like, okay, we have not succeeded in a long time. We need to strip down to the brass tacks, start over, and really try to figure this thing out because they are not built even close to compete in the Eastern Conference.
Not at all.
So that's a good trade. I personally love trading Ivan Provorov during Pride Month. I think that's
great, isn't it?
I think that's a really nice little piece to this. For those that don't know, Ivan Provorov did not participate in the Flyers Pride celebration this year because he claimed that it was against his Russian Orthodox religion. Didn't even say that his family was potentially in danger if he were to celebrate. It was just a religion thing. It was just he just doesn't believe in homosexuals. So shout out to you, Ivan Provorov. Go down to Columbus, you homophobe, and enjoy rebuilding for the next 10 years of your career. I couldn't
agree with you more.
Also not that good.
Agree with you more.
Also not that good. So like you're just gonna be on a team that's never going to win anything, that is largely dysfunctional, and nothing's going to happen to you for the rest of your career. See you later. He'll be in the KHL in 3. He'll be in the KHL in 3 years.
You came in with the heat, and I love it.
You can almost predict that. I mean,
yeah.
Of all of the, like, obviously Ilya Lyubushkin didn't participate in the Sabres Pride Night, but he did say that he legitimately worried for his family back in Russia. And given the geopolitical climate right now, I'm not one to say that that's untrue. I'm at least hesitant to believe it, because I do think that there's like a little bit of an anti-gay culture around Russia. But at the same time, like, you can't say that's not a real thing.
You look at the Artemi Panarin situation when he spoke out against Putin, and less than 24 hours later he had false rape allegations against him out of Russia, and then he had to go like into this weird secret hiding for like a month.
Yeah,
because he was terrified.
You don't mess around with Vladimir Putin. I think
not at all.
I think a lot of people, Brittany Griner learned that the hard way. I think a lot of people are learning that, and of course, it's a very tragic and horrible situation in Ukraine. So I think that there's a lot of compromise, and there's a lot of thought that you can put into a lot of these situations. But Ivan Provorov wasn't one of them. He was unabashedly
in my opinion.
So
listen, Ivan Provorov. People are entitled to their opinions and the way they want to feel about life, and that's fine. But this, for me, the Pride Nights, it isn't about whether or not you agree with something. It's about letting a certain brand of people, and I'm not trying to, for the lack of better terms, let them know that they're accepted here, that it's okay.
You're not
make it a safe place for them.
Yeah, you're not outwardly supporting it and say that's what you do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a gay person and whatever. No, you're just being a normal human being, accepting people for who they are. That's
exactly. You're letting them know that this game,
you don't have to make it a bigger deal than it is. And then he did, and he got traded, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, you're letting them know that this is a safe place for them. And if you're not for that, man, then fucking kick rocks, man. Get out of here.
Like, honestly, go back to Russia. Like,
people who know me know my feelings. I'm very progressive, and
it's not a political issue.
It's not.
It often people like to say that and excuse that. Oh, why are we talking about? That's not politics. You're just an asshole.
Yeah, you're an asshole. 100% agree. Couldn't agree with you more, Hurls. Ivan Provorov this past season, 6 goals for 27 points and a -17 on the plus minus. Obviously, a big contract for dumping that contract. It's a big contract for them to dump. Taking a look at some of the other players here too. Cal Peterson, obviously, we all know he's been kind of like up and down in the lineup in LA. Again, kick rocks guy. Said no to the Sabres years ago. See you later. I'm not too familiar with some of these other players that are involved with it, like Kevin Kooten and Aiden Hodgson.
I didn't know anyone else involved in the trade.
But you're, I don't know if it's my reception or your reception, but you're coming in real shaky right now, bud. Still a little shaky.
We're all tiny piece. Could be a combination, but you keep going, and I'll try to figure it out.
Yeah, I'll keep going. But regardless, again, big 3-way trade makes the Stanley Cup Finals a little bit more exciting for those who haven't enjoyed it. Obviously, some other news. And again, it looks like the Flyers really make out in this one, pick up some prospects and some picks for a team that's clearly rebuilding. And another thing too, as well, is Carter Hart on the trade block. We heard some rumors about that today. Buffalo's name was thrown around a little bit. I'm not sure if that was just pure speculation or if somebody heard something. I forget the insider that tweeted that out.
It was a TSN insider, so I think
it was okay.
I think there was like a little bit more than smoke to the fire. I think it was like a legitimate source that heard that the Sabres were at least kicking around possible options.
Yeah, and what's his age? How old is he? Is he 25? He's 24. Okay, so I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, depending on the price tag, I mean, it could be low risk, high reward for sure. Obviously, I remember how great of a rookie season he had. I'm pretty sure he started the year off this well. The year off that, like, he was on fire, wasn't he?
Yeah, he obviously had a down past couple of years to the point where
Mhm.
I think they had to bench him for a while. And then this season, I think, like you said at the beginning, and even in the middle at certain points, it seemed like he kind of figured it out again.
Yeah,
And I would say, aside from Devin Levi, he's probably the best Canadian goalie prospect of the past 5 to 10 years.
yeah.
And like you said, he's 24 years old, 3 or 4 seasons in the NHL. So not even close to the potential prime of his career.
Okay, so this season he was 22, 23, and 10. And I remember on a dumpster fire
Really bad team.
Flyers team with a 294 goals against and a 907 save percentage. Career-wise, he's 84, 84, and 26 with a 296 goals against and a 906 save percentage. His GAA this year and GAA and save percentage this year, very close to his career numbers.
I mean, those aren't bad numbers.
No,
Those,
they're not. They're not.
especially as like an NHL goalie on a largely bad team.
Those were better numbers than what Bob had this season.
Yeah, they're better numbers than I would say. Those are above average NHL goalie numbers, especially in this day and age of increased scoring.
Mm-hmm. His first 2 years in the NHL, in 31 games played, he was 16 and 13. Second season, 43 games played, he went 24 and 13. Third season, he went. That's when the downfalls kind of spiraled out of control a little bit. 27 games played, 9 and 11. Last season, or the season before last, 13 and 24, and then this past season, 22 and 23. But again, like, I think depending on the price tag, I think there's some upside there. Definitely. How would you feel if they went out and made a deal for Carter Hart? Obviously, that takes UPL out of Buffalo. Devin Levi's on the Buffalo Sabres next year. There is zero doubt about that.
So do you think UPL is included in that deal? I had a friend ask me that today. Like, would that be like a 1-for-1? Like, what? I guess I'm wondering, given like the fact that obviously he's a pretty touted prospect and he's already played a significant amount of games in his career. Like, what do you give up for a guy like that? Especially knowing that the Flyers are effectively just having a fire sale. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Cal Peterson plays 30 games for the Flyers next season.
Oh, yeah, I think for sure.
You know what I mean? So I think it's interesting because, like we said, he's a Canadian guy. Him and Devin Levi probably know each other. He's enough of a veteran at this point that he can give you a good chunk of games and also be competitive while also not being like that bell cow to the point where if he gets on a run that you're not going to play Levi at all. I think that's the risk you run into if you go out and get Connor Hellebuck, because he's the type of a guy that can play 60, 65 games, no problem. So in terms of talent level, like, it might be even a better situation than Connor Hellebuck with the Levi combination. Because as we've discussed, like, they don't want to block the path of Devin Levi being the eventual number one goalie for the Sabres the next 5 to 10 years or even longer. They probably want him to be the full-time, unabashedly number one starter starting in, I would say, 2024. So if this is the bridge guy that you have, it might not be the worst idea. He comes in next season, can give you 40, 45 games. He's proven that he's an above average starter in the NHL. He's young enough, but also has enough games under them that he could give Levi some tutelage. The more I think about it, the more I don't hate it.
Yeah. I mean, me and you, we've talked a lot about potential goalie tandems next season. We've both been pretty high on the idea if he's willing to waive his no. I actually got a lot of hate. I don't know if you saw that. I tweeted it out the other day. People were not about Flower being a Buffalo Sabre. Like, no way. He's first off, we had a 41-year-old Craig Anderson put up decent numbers for the Sabres this season. Marc-Andre Fleury is a future Hall of Famer with 3 rings.
Probably, and I would say at this point, way better than Craig Anderson.
Yeah, and why on earth would you think that if you're in terms of finding a guy to sit next to Devin Levi every single day during the season, have his locker next to Devin's, why would you not want it to be Marc-Andre Fleury?
He's the perfect guy. Like
he literally is.
And also in terms of the style of game they play, they're the exact same height. They're from similar places.
Yes.
Everything about the situation. Obviously, he can come and give you their 30, 40 games too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people probably just want probably a better option. That's why the Connor Hellebuck news, I think, was so significant, is because he's a top 5 NHL goalie. You know what I mean? And even I think people are probably excited about Carter Hart because I'd put him in at his best, he's top 10. And probably given his averages, he's top 15 to top 20. And that's better than anything the Sabres have had in a long time.
Yeah.
So combining that with Devin Levi, who I think we all believe as he continues to develop, even at some point next season, he could get into that top 20, top 15 range himself.
100%.
So both of those guys, and I think the tandem mindset for goalies these days is really important. Like we've discussed, there's only 3 or 4 or 5 guys in the league that can give you 65, 70 games anymore. So you want a good tandem, and you want a guy that, number one, you don't want to play on back-to-backs. 2 of 3, 3 of 4. The schedule's crazy these days. So if you can have 2 guys that you can really rely on, that's really important. And if that's Carter Hart, I think everybody should be at least a little bit more optimistic about it.
Agreed. Yeah. I'm not against Carter Hart being a Buffalo Sabre because I think he is a good goaltender. I think that it's hard to gauge a goalie's ceiling on a team like the Flyers, who've just been an absolute. I mean, dude, they traded a first and second round pick for Rasmus Ristolainen, and a warm body and another warm body.
And they probably want to get out of that contract now.
Yeah, you know what I mean, right? It was a terrible deal.
If you're Danny Briere, you're probably trying to get out of basically every single contract on that team right now.
Analytically, Ristolainen is a goalie's worst nightmare because he's just
not even analytically. Look at him play.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean. In terms of keeping things simple. He's a dumpster fire. Fire.
He's not a good defender.
I'll never question his work ethic because the guy works his ass off.
Yeah,
but doesn't have a lot going on up here in terms of hockey IQ.
Exactly.
But yeah, I feel for guys like Carter Hart because I think there's a very good goaltender in there and just needs to be able to stretch his wings, baby, onto their team.
Exactly. Come right to us. Bring us to the playoffs.
Exactly. I think we've said it a couple times. Devin Levi starts his career 2-3 weeks earlier. Buffalo Sabres are the team that's playing Boston in the first round, not the Panthers. You gave me a tandem of Devin Levi and Carter Hart and another veteran defenseman, top 4 defenseman on this team. I'm willing to bet a lot of money, whatever the odds are, that the Sabres are in the playoffs next year. Maybe not even as a wild card team.
I would bet money on the Atlantic Division, to be honest. Who knows what's going to happen with the Maple Leafs? Who knows what's going to happen with the Bruins? Who knows what's going to happen with the Lightning or the Panthers or any of these teams?
There's no way the Bruins repeat that again or getting anywhere close to that.
Exactly. And
no way.
We all knew that this was their year to do it.
Yeah.
They sold the entire barn and the tractor for this season, and they lost in the first round. The Leafs
they still got Tyler Bertuzzi out of it. I'm pretty sure he's still there for another year.
No, he's a UFA.
Oh, is he UFA? Well,
he's either.
I better hope that he liked it enough there to stick around.
He's either a UFA or an RFA. So is Orlov. I don't know about Hathaway. Bergeron's probably going to retire. Marchand's not the same player anymore. No. They have one of the best players in the game, but who's David Pastrnak going to be if he doesn't have Marchand and Bergeron on his line? So
yeah.
I would venture. This is me being an optimistic Sabres fan, as I have been for my entire life. I would venture to believe if the Sabres make significant improvements this offseason, they have a legitimate chance to win the division next year. And that's really exciting.
Yeah. And I got in terms of Toronto, and I discussed this with a work colleague earlier, one of the big 4 has to go, right? You can't bring all 4 of those guys back next season.
No,
I don't think you can. And expect to be a competitor in the playoffs.
And you also
have no killers on that team, and whoever it is.
I saw Hellebuck and Marner. rumors for some reason. I think Marner's a guy you definitely keep. I would even venture to say that you would. I would even venture to say you keep Marner over Matthews.
I think Matthews. I think Trevlin's first top of his list of things to do as new GM of the Leafs is to figure out what's going to happen with Austin Matthews beyond next season. Is he a Maple Leaf? Does he really? Does he? I mean, he says he wants to be here, but you listen to the words like Willie Nylander, who says, There's no other place I want to play but Toronto. And then you hear Austin Matthews say it, the same thing, but not nearly as, an enthusiastic way as Nylander did.
No, I think he would. I think he would love to play in Arizona.
Yeah. He would love to play in Arizona as long as they have a place to play.
Exactly. Who knows what's going to happen with that?
Last but not least, obviously, some news came out today on Rasmus Dahlin, Sabres star defenseman. Some rumors float around that we could possibly be seeing a contract extension soon, and which would not surprise me at all. It was said by Kevin Adams that is on his list of things to do, and I'm pretty sure we also know that he has already engaged in contract talks with Owen Power's agent. So it looks like we could be in the midst of a Rasmus Dahlin extension. Hurls, just right off the top of your head, like, what's a good number? Obviously, it's got to be 8 years. Do you think it's going to be, above, at, or under 10 million?
I think it's going to be at. I think it's 8 years, 10 million.
I think so too.
Yeah,
and I think that's a steal.
No,
I think
it's a steal, and that makes him the third highest paid defenseman in the league on a per year basis. He would only be behind Erik Karlsson and Drew Doughty, who are, probably two of the best defensemen of the past 10 to 15 years in the NHL.
And honestly, if
he should make more than them.
Yeah, honestly, and then you talk about Owen Power. You can't justify paying Owen Power more than Dahlin, right?
No.
So
he's gonna get a bridge deal probably.
Man, you would have thought the same though about guys like Tage and even Samuelson would have sold bet on themselves, signed a shorter term deal and broke big, especially after the year that Tage Thompson had, coming close to 40 with 38. You saw the potential there to be a star in the league, and then signs that 8-year deal at 7.2. And I mean, I'm sure he's still happy with the money, but kind of screwed himself because he's a $9 million player right now, only making 7.2.
For sure. I think it's hard to say. I mean, Dahlin took the bridge deal, and he wasn't even close to where he is now when he took his second contract. So
also with Dahlin, the organization was in a much different place, different GM.
For sure. I think Power probably ends up getting 8 or 9. Like, he's not as good as Dahlin offensively, of course. Like, he's probably just as good or even better defensively. And his ceiling is just as high or even higher.
Would you take 8.5 for 8 right now?
For Power?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Obviously.
If you can get those two guys,
I would do 9.5, just like a little bit less.
Yeah, if you could get me Owen Power signed for the next 8 years, along with Dahlin, and have both those numbers come under 20 million, sign me up all day.
Look, I think
that would mean you'd have Tage, Samuelson, Cousins, Dahlin, and Owen Power all signed, if my math is correct, for under 40 million.
Yeah, like you have your top two centers, your top two centers and your top 3 defensemen locked away for the next decade. Yeah. It's really, really smart business what Kevin Adams has done thus far. Obviously, Dahlin proved this season that he is who we all thought he was. He is the generational talent, the number 1 overall pick, who was far and away no doubt. If the Sabres took anyone else that draft, it would have been nonsensical. Same thing with Owen Power, although I think the Matty Beniers discussion was at least like a tiny bit closer.
You could have it.
Yeah, it was at least a tiny bit closer. And Matty Beniers, very good player, rookie of the year. More power to him. I would have loved him on the Sabres, but I think getting that 6'6" franchise lockdown
defenseman, guy who plays
was probably more important.
A night.
Yeah, who was probably more important in the long run, especially given the forward depth the Sabres had in the organization at that point. So, like you said, I think any type of deal under $10 million for Power is a bargain. Any type of deal under the highest paid defenseman in the league, which is what's going to happen for Dahlin, is a bargain. Mm-hmm. It's crazy talking about this $10 million a year is a bargain, but that's where we are with professional sports, and that's the type of
buddy. Our city's quarterback is in Gillette commercials right now.
Exactly. I mean,
TMZ's following him around, so
I think he's dating Haley Steinfeld now. He's dating an A-lister. He's right up my alley. I got a story on the site. My first day back from vacation, Josh down on a sushi date with Haley Steinfeld.
Were you a part of that story?
I mean, not the original photos, but when we got back from Memorial Day weekend, he had eventually gone out to dinner with her, and there was a picture of them at sushi, and I did some.
Yeah, I saw those.
Did some Instagram digging, and we were able to use it, and it worked out really well for us. Either way,
is it official now? Are they dating?
Oh, they're 100% dating. Yeah.
All right.
It's great. We love it.
It's just crazy that
not to get too much of a tangent.
It feels like he's been broken up with Brittany. Is that now ex for like a month, and
well, there's been a lot of rumblings about the nature of that relationship and the transgressions for I think 8 to 9 months now. So
it's been in rocky waters it seems for a while. So
either way, it's officially done, Josh Allen. But getting back to the discussion of where we were, I think his cap hit this year is $42 million. Something like that, which is just like can you imagine making $42 million a year in Buffalo, no less? So I don't know.
I think he's a Buffalo Bill for life, honestly.
Yeah, of course. I think so too. I think Dahlin's a Buffalo Sabre for life.
Who?
I think Dahlin's a Buffalo Sabre for life.
I think so too. I think there's a number of players on this team that are Sabres for life.
Yeah. I mean, if it all goes the way they want it to, with this being the final rebuild, getting to the playoffs next season, kind of the way the Bills happened in 2017, right? They make the playoffs in that first year with McDermott. Obviously, it's not going to happen in the first year with Granato and Adams, but they've been slowly getting to this point where the expectation, even way more so than last year and the year before, is that if the Sabres don't make the playoffs this season, it is going to be looked at as a massive failure. Something happened. Yeah.
I know Kevin Adams wouldn't say playoffs or bust in his exit interviews, but that's what it is.
No, it's 100% that. Like it was almost that this season at the trade deadline when we were like begging him to do something.
Well, and that's the thing. And listen, I'm not saying we were wrong.
No,
because I don't think we were.
No,
because I still think you could have made a better move than found a way. Like Riley Stillman, you probably could have gotten a better defenseman than Riley Stillman.
Turned out to be much better than we expected.
Yeah, he wasn't bad. Was not bad for Buffalo, but you probably could have gotten somebody that added more to your lineup to get you over that hump. That was good enough to get you 2 more points. Because that's really what it came down to. For someone to get you, was good enough to get you 2 more points.
I know. It's wild.
But regardless, it didn't work out that way. I'm happy with the way the season went. I'm not angry, shaking my fists like some fans were. I mean, am I disappointed we didn't make the playoffs? Yeah. But, Jordan Greenway, the jury's still out on him. We'll see what happens.
I mean, he played better in the 20 games he played for the Sabres than he has in the last 3 years for the Wild. And I think that the development of Don Granato and the culture surrounding the team right now, any guy that comes in, I think is going to benefit from that structure and that organization. So it's more than anything with Dahlin coming up, Power, the draft, free agency. It's a really exciting time to be a Sabres fan.
We haven't even talked about obviously the Amherst lost to the Hershey Bears in the semifinals, but just the impressive season from the Rochester Amherst, the Yuri Kulik. Obviously Matthew Savoy didn't really contribute too much in the time he did have, but there's a lot to be proud of down in Rochester. And I mean, they were selling out games there in the playoffs. There's a lot of hype. A lot of Sabres fans help contribute to that, but yeah, a lot to be excited there. And the crazy thing is, as great of a year that Yuri Kulik had, you can't even pencil him in for sure as a sure thing for this lineup,
and I think that
which is
really
crazy.
that really happens. That really depends on what happens in free agency, right?
Yeah.
Like if the Sabres go out and get a guy like Travis Konecny or Kevin Hayes or any of these guys that are free agents that could come in and slot in on the second or third line or that second or third pair. A lot of these young guys might have to wait another year, which not the worst thing in the world. Yuri Kulik's 18 or 19 years old. I think that like he would absolutely benefit from having another year in Rochester. You don't want to rush these guys up too quickly. You know, like I think Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka are obviously NHL players at this point, but they only had 1 year in Rochester before they moved up. And turns out they're as good as we thought that they were. And we're all expecting massive jumps for both of them this season. So I think that having, another year for Savoy in the WHL, because he can either be on the Sabres or go back to juniors.
Yeah, there's no Rochester for him.
Yeah, and then Kulik, another year in the AHL. As a 19-year-old, you don't need to rush him up to the big squad.
No, and he could be your first call up in the NHL if you need him.
Exactly. Injuries are going to happen. So.
If he does not start in Buffalo next year, he absolutely gets games in Buffalo.
Definitely get games.
There's no way. There's no way you don't give him games. You got to reward the kid at some point.
No, yeah. I mean, he's a talented player, and he's the type of guy I think the Sabres have been looking to replace Victor Olofsson with for a while. So we'll see what happens with that. But
Final thoughts?
Very exciting time.
Final
thoughts. I really hope the Panthers make this a series. I haven't had the chance to watch too many NHL playoff games this season. And of course, these first two haven't been the most exciting. So really hoping that they figure it out at home and be the team that we saw in the first 3 rounds. I think they're very capable of that. And I think Bob has that in him as well. This is kind of the last hurrah for him, in my opinion, in terms of where he's at in his career. And I think a lot of this falls on Matthew Tkachuk and Alexander Barkov. They need to put up or shut up at this point. It's obviously a really tall task against probably, in my opinion, one of the better teams to be in the Stanley Cup Finals in a long time in Vegas, who's come together at the right time. And they're very good, and they're probably going to win. But I at least hope they make it a series. And then we can get into the Sabres a little bit more as more things continue to develop. Yeah. But like we said, hopefully Darlene gets signed here in the next couple weeks or however long it takes, and we'll see what happens free agency. But it's gonna be a long summer and only a few months left.
Fun summer.
Yeah,
and I do have obviously in years in off seasons past on this show, we've had guys like Chris Peters and Cam Robinson on. Cam Robinson with Elite Prospects. Chris Peters, I believe now with Flow Hockey. He's been on a couple different platforms, but 2 very informative guys. We've had other analysts and insiders on too. So excited for what the offseason brings. Hopefully we'll have a certain Hamburg native on who it looks to be the first Buffalo native to be drafted in the first round of the NHL draft since Patrick Kane, Quint Musty. His name's been thrown around. Hopefully maybe we can have him on as a guest. We will see. I know our other co-host is much more confident than I, but we'll see if the kid has time. Obviously, he has a lot going on. So, but my final thoughts too, outside of we're going away from hockey, is obviously you've probably seen it here in Buffalo. We've been dealing with a lot of smoky weather. Not even weather; it's just smoke that's filtering in from Canada. I'm in Canandaigua right now, and like literally, you would think that it's fog. No, it's smoke from the wildfires that are taking place currently in Canada. And as we've been talking over the past hour, I got an update on my phone that there's an advisory for people for tomorrow morning. Essentially, I don't know if they tell them to stay in their houses if they can, but like to be careful when breathing in this air. It's going to get worse. So for anybody who is in one of those rough areas back home in Buffalo, I'm 2 hours away, but don't try and breathe too much of that smoke in, I guess. It's pretty bad here right now in Canandaigua, but I heard it's much, much worse over in Buffalo right now.
Oh, stay safe over there. a massive problem here in California, obviously with the wildfires.
You obviously know yourself.
Yeah, in the past 7 years, like
normalcy.
in the past 7 years, there are times where you go outside and the sky is just orange, just from the wildfires. So yeah, everyone stay safe over there.
Actually, Hurls, after we get off, just take a look at. There was a video. I think Howard Simon may have posted it. It was a video of Yankee Stadium tonight. Nuts, man! You can't even see the sky.
That's crazy.
So,
well, global warming, it's a real thing.
No, it's not. It's totally fake. It's totally fake. Those people are idiots. Personally, anyone who doesn't think global warming is a thing.
No, we don't need to acknowledge.
Yeah, we don't have to. Yeah, no, we're not going to acknowledge them. Them and the flat earthers, they need to go.
And the homophobes.
And who?
And the homophobes.
Yeah, and the homophobes. The Ivan Provorovs of the world, the flat earthers, and the global warming is fake people. They got to go. But with that being said, man, Hurls, always a pleasure. Obviously, much quicker episode this week, but always a pleasure to have you on, bud. And for all those that followed around since the start, we started about an hour ago. Thanks for hanging around in this impromptu episode of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case on George Irvin Boulevard. Remember, for all your drinking needs, whether it's for hockey, the Sabres, the Bills, the Bisons, the Bandits. We didn't even talk about that. The National Lacrosse League champion Buffalo Bandits bringing home.
I wish I could say it was the city's first championship, but they did win. I think it's their fifth now, so they're basically
it's been a long time since
basically a dynasty at this point. Yeah, since 2008. So
yeah,
they
got revenge over the Colorado Rock. I guess there's like a parade or some type of celebration plan on the 15th, so that'll be exciting.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's kind of a niche sport. A lot of people don't know a lot about it. But the fans are really passionate.
It's exciting. I've been to plenty of Bandits games. It's an exciting atmosphere, dude.
Yeah, people love it.
It really is.
People love it. And I think the fan base is just as passionate or even more so than Sabres and Bills. It's obviously much smaller. But that's the type of thing that is really good for the city, no matter how big it is. And any type of win, any type of championship, no matter how small or how niche the sport is, I think that's a really good thing. So
yeah,
shout out to the Bandits. Hopefully the Sabres and Bills can keep it going.
Couple clicks for the Bandits. But again, thanks for everybody for hopping on. This has been episode 126 of Two Goalies, One Mic, signing off. You guys have a great week and enjoy Game 3 Thursday night. We'll talk to you then. See you later.